come back.
Good Thursday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Plenty of Browns to talk about a little later in the show. Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily will join us, and we will talk about the Browns OTAs and all that's going on. That's where we begin as well. Organized team activities, number 2, continue to go on out in Berea, and some work going on for the Browns. Here's a good look at Deshaun Watson, a little bootleg, trying to work on the accuracy. This one goes to Jakeem Grant. Might be a deep threat that the Browns fans are sleeping on a little bit from the wide receiver position. A great return guy can be a deep threat as well. Chase Winovich looking fast and getting the pass rushing drills down. And then David Bell, a young guy that a lot of people think could do big things, also running routes. Going on out in Berea, OTAs with that. Let's welcome in Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan. Spencer, appreciate the time and you hopping on with us. What do you think the most important thing that the Browns want to get done in these early OTAs is?
Yeah, well, first of all, happy to be here. Very excited to make my debut on the show with you, Dave. But I think obviously the most important thing is, especially at this time of year, just getting Deshaun Watson acclimated with the offense, getting him acclimated with his teammates. He seemed to do a little bit of that himself with the trip to the Bahamas over the weekend, trying to kind of get to know the guys. And, I mean, so far you're hearing rave reviews from some of the other players at press conferences just about the type of leader he is, type of player he is. So it seems like that's kind of those off-the-field things are going a long way, but also on the field, they're getting their first look at him under center, how he's going to command things, you know, what he's going to do in this offense. So kind of acclimating him with all that, I think is obviously priority number 1. You get a new quarterback in here, that's going to be the biggest thing, is just getting him familiar with the system, but also just familiar with his teammates and building the morale there.
Yeah, the other thing that we're hearing is the offense is looking significantly different, and it's pretty apparent and evident early on. That's not a surprise. Kevin Stefanski is going to build it around the strengths of the quarterback.
Yeah, and I think that's a question Browns fans have going into the season, obviously, is how is this offense going to look different? There was obvious complaints last year about maybe not using Nick Chubb enough, but what does that look like this year with a quarterback who has some mobility himself, but also we are assuming is based on past tape, past seasons, is a better passer overall than Baker Mayfield. So, you know, what can they do with him that they maybe couldn't do with Baker? How different is this offense going to look? And the hard thing, though, obviously with potential suspension looming for Deshaun Watson is, you know, we might not even know the answer to that question until midway through the season or later, just based on how that kind of plays out. So they'll obviously work now and get him acclimated and go in assuming he plays for a good portion of the season. But until we know that suspension, which is kind of the dark cloud hanging over this team right now, the offense that we get week 1 still might end up looking different than the offense that we get, you know, week 8, 9, 10 later in the season. So it's all very fluid, but obviously priority number 1, as we've kind of said, is just seeing what types of plays and how the scheme will vary from last year with Baker Mayfield to this year with Deshaun Watson.
So along those lines, the Bleacher Report came out with each and every team's to-do list for the rest of the 2022 offseason. For the Browns, trade quarterback Baker Mayfield. We'll get into that a little bit later in the show. Add a veteran to the defensive interior and figure out which defensive back will primarily serve as the team's nickel cornerback. Of course, that is something they have to do because they traded away Troy Hill. And early on, Greg Newsome has kind of been at least working in that role. Spencer, I don't know about you. I thought he played really well. The thing I would say about Greg Newsome, I never thought he was a rookie in his rookie season last year.
Yeah, no, Troy Hill was great. And I think when they made that trade after the draft or on draft weekend, really, it kind of came as a bit of a surprise. And I do think, though, that speaks to kind of answer that last bullet point that Bleacher Report has on there. I think they value Martin Emerson enough that might be the guy that you see slotted there come the beginning of the season. I mean, he's a bigger guy, so playing in the slot maybe works well for him. 6'2", one of the bigger cornerbacks on the roster. And he's, when you're going up against tight ends out of that slot position, I think that could sort of bode well for him. Have some questions about his tackling ability a little bit and maybe how he fares in that regard. But I do think that, reading tea leaves, when you have a guy like Troy Hill, who, as we both agree, like, I'm right there with you that I thought he played great last year. And again, they trade him away. It kind of feels like, okay, well, they drafted a cornerback that same weekend. They must see something in him that they like. So that's kind of where my head's at with it. I do think ultimately he maybe is the guy that gets slotted there even as a rookie, and he'll kind of have to learn on the fly. But that's kind of where my head's at least with that position.
Now, the other one is a veteran defensive interior lineman. I think that would go a long way. I'm not sure the Browns are thinking that way. There's still a couple of names out there. Could you see that? And which of the names still available do you like as like that defensive tackle type?
I could see it. What's interesting, Dave, about the defensive tackle position is just it seems like the Browns have shown us over the last few years that they just don't put a lot of value and stock in that position specifically. I mean, I remember mock drafting in 2021 Christian Barmore, a guy who had a great season with the Patriots this past year on the interior defensive line, like to the Browns. And then obviously things fell differently. They ended up with Greg Newsome, which was a great pick for them at the time. Can't argue with it. But I every time I think I have it figured out in terms of where they're going to go or if there's guys they're going to look at that position, it just doesn't seem to come to fruition for them. I just don't think they value that position as much as maybe other teams do. In terms of names that come to mind, I have heard Ndamukong Suh mentioned. I actually, over the weekend when I was hosting, there was a caller who kind of thought, yeah, Ndamukong Suh, great veteran presence. And I was like, I don't know about Ndamukong Suh. I don't know if I trust him to be the veteran that I want leading some of these young guys with some of his checkered past as a player. But I know that's a name that's been mentioned. Interestingly enough, two guys that are former Browns, Sheldon Richardson, which I know he maybe didn't love the way things kind of went down last year when he was released. But that name kind of pops out to me. Also, Larry Ogunjobi hasn't been re-signed yet by Cincinnati. So those are two guys that maybe stand out to me, veteran guys who have been here. But, it's hard to pinpoint specifically one guy they could look at because I just don't know how much they value that position or who they value in those roles.
So we're going to stay on the defensive side of the ball here. Pro Football Focus came out with their 2022 NFL safety rankings and tiers. The all-around tier has Amos, Smith, Hyde, Jordan Poyer, former Brown, now with the Bills, and then John Johnson III. And Spencer, I think the Browns figured out how to best use John Johnson III as the season went along. I think they were asking him to do some things early in the year that I don't think were his strengths, and I think they figured out midway through the year. About the time that defense really started to click, they figured out what he does and what he does well.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I do think early on, and this was kind of expected, there was going to be some growing pains for everybody on this defense, but especially a guy like John Johnson III, who was a new face here coming over from L.A., but as the season went on, he got better and better. I remember early in the season, too, like everybody watching these games, he seemed like the guy blowing coverages on the back end, seemed to be a lot of miscommunication. But then as things kind of went along and the defense played better and better, he clearly sort of started to figured out where he fit. And also on the flip side of that, Joe Woods figured out where best to use him in this defense. So I think certainly worthy of being up here in this ranking, speaks to, again, Andrew Berry's ability last year to revamp that defense, bring in some talented players. And I think year two with him in this system is only going to, the sky's the limit, if you will, for what he's going to be able to do. And I think he's going to be even more of a veteran leader on this team in that back end. Yeah,
I'm with you. I think he is going to have a big year for the Browns without question. All right, we're going to head back to OTAs. In addition to basketball, Browns players enjoying a little bit of hoops. They are playing knockouts pretty much every day when they're not working on the football kind of thing. Yesterday, the aforementioned John Johnson III right there wins the round of knockout as he defeats the rest of the teams. And then Kevin Stefanski talked about them playing basketball.
I bought that hoop at Dick's Sporting Goods in Minnesota maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So when we moved out here, I was living in these condos over here. So we got that hoop delivered to the condos. This is 2 years ago, COVID times. So we brought the basket and had it here in the parking lot. So me and the kids would come over here and shoot while we were living over here. And then when we ended up moving, we left the basket here. So that's my hoop. So don't break it, AWOC. But having it out here, it's amazing how much these guys love to shoot hoops. They just love it. And they don't care that it's on the grass. They don't care that the rim's bent and it's an old basket. They love that. So part of what that is, Mary Kay, is number one, having fun, but number two, just competing. Deshaun and Jacoby played knockout yesterday, so just to watch these guys compete, which is such a pillar of what we're trying to do here.
Can we get you in a game?
Jacoby won.
And Spencer, that kind of goes back to something that's been a recurring thing. You mentioned the Bahamas trip. All those things build chemistry, and that is huge, and what the Browns felt they were missing a year ago.
Yeah, no, I think all those types of tactics are huge for any team. I love the story behind it. It feels very Kevin Stefanski. I'm just curious, Dave. We know last year Stefanski kind of got on Myles Garrett for his basketball, breaking the hoop, and then somehow he got permission to play in the Celebrity All-Star game back in February. I'm wondering how much he's going to get to use that hoop, or if they're going to tell him just to stay away.
As long as it's knockout, it's not going to be. Don't want you dunking, don't want you running, don't want you doing anything that you can play knockout, because it's basically shooting and that's it. All right, Spencer German and I got to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about Deshaun Watson, some national perspectives on how long the suspension could be. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan here on Sports4CLE. Time for us to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Deshaun Watson case.
Good evening. This is Mike from Madison. Dave, I appreciate you being biased on this subject. It's a tough subject about Watson. But everybody has to see both sides. This is starting to look like a cash grab. And it's got to be protect the shield against girls going after their players for money. Against the law to do that. You got to protect your players against people. That's the same thing. Protect the shield. Love you guys.
All right. As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. I'm really conflicted about the Deshaun Watson thing. Now, as the details come out, 22 litigants making claims, but the one attorney also advertising. Anybody who's given Deshaun Watson a massage, contact me via Instagram. With 22, certainly there were some things that Deshaun Watson shouldn't have done. And probably if he could go back and not do them, he probably would. But there's something that doesn't seem right with one attorney representing 22 of these people and advertising for them. So Spencer, it's a really complex issue. And I get both sides, and I'm just sitting here trying to take in as much information as I can and be as open-minded as I can. And we're having a little bit of issues with that. So again, there are some things that,
Sorry, you got me?
We got you now. There are some things that don't seem
that.
quite right on either side of the coin there.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right with that. And to be clear, too, like the way you feel, Dave, the way I feel, the way anybody feels about the situation, you're very much entitled to feel how you feel. And I'm in the same boat as you, where I have tried to play it down the middle as best I could and just try to absorb information as it comes. And I do think up until this week, we were getting more from obviously the accuser side, and it was painting Deshaun Watson in a certain way. And now we're finding out more from Deshaun Watson's side. Both Rusty Hardin, Deshaun Watson's lawyer, and Tony Busby were both on our station this week, 92 through the Fan, which was interesting to kind of hear the two sides and some of the information that both of them had to share from their angles of things. It is very complicated. And I do think that this week especially, things have started to maybe sway back in Deshaun Watson's favor a little bit in terms of how people view him, because there is some shady information, as you alluded to, with the one lawyer representing all of them and kind of advertising this. I think that certainly plays into that. There's a lot of blurred lines here, and it's hard to know. We may never get the whole story or know the whole story. But I think the best way to go about this truly is, as you alluded to, like gather the information and then form your own opinion. And if you do feel uncomfortable with it, I can understand that. I've been kind of saying, as maybe, I don't know if it's insensitive, but as bad as it sounds, like I do think if Deshaun Watson plays next year and the Browns are going out and winning games, I think that'll be enough for people to move on and look past it. I just think that's the reality of sports and sports figures and how we kind of treat these things and treat these people. But I know there are some people out there who are hardened in, no matter what information's presented, I've already made my mind up. And if that's you, that's totally fine. I just
I'm
think
with you. We can't tell people how to process the information. You just
for
can't.
Sure.
And I get that.
You just hope they process it. You just hope they gather everything they can and kind of figure out what their opinion is on it, for sure.
Yep, I'm with you. All right, along those lines, this is an interesting take. This is Michael Smith about the length of the suspension. This is from Peacock, and it's from the Brother from Another show.
I'd be shocked at this point if Deshaun Watson were suspended for less than an entire season.
Yeah. Why do you say that?
I think the league has no choice but to be in CYA mode. And they're going to err on the side of caution when it comes to the court of public opinion. Like, I look back at Ben Roethlisberger getting 6 games and reduced to 4. Which in hindsight, like if Ben Roethlisberger happened right now, how many games in this climate, in this contemporary climate, how many games is Ben Roethlisberger getting? Probably a season. I mean,
probably like 8, because it was 2. It was 2 women, right? It was 2 women with Ben Roethlisberger.
Yes.
And he was not arrested.
No.
I don't think he was sued. Or he may have been sued, and then there was a settlement.
Well, I mean, the specifics, it's not apples to apples, obviously, but the numbers are much greater in this case, number of accusers. But he was accused of rape in Georgia and in rape in a hotel room, if memory serves me correctly. My point is, it's such a, it's just the times have changed. And in this current climate, I don't see a world in which the NFL looks at this situation. Forget about guilt or innocence. I'm just talking about optics. Where the NFL looks at this situation and thinks that 6 games is going to fly.
And Spencer, I think that's a really valid point. by Michael Smith. Michael Holley is the other one. He used to be a Plain Dealer reporter as well. It is the court of public relations or public opinion that the NFL is dealing with. And with Trevor Bauer getting 2 years, now he has appealed that, but with the Major League Baseball coming down on Trevor Bauer for 2 years, you can be sure the NFL is, that's in the back of their mind when they issue whatever this suspension may be.
Yeah, I've mentioned a couple times on the air the Trevor Bauer thing. I do wonder, shockingly, baseball might have actually set a precedent for something, right? I know they don't do that for very many things, but it does feel like this almost sets the stage for other professional sports leagues to look and say, you know what, we're gonna over punish and then leave it up to the players union or the players association to be the ones who try to, you know, appeal it and defend the person that's being accused of these things or in this situation. The only thing that gets me with that's different is with the Trevor Bauer situation, they had clear like physical evidence. Mm-hmm. And with the Deshaun Watson situation, it's more so his side of the story versus, you know, it's he said, she said, and that makes it a lot more complicated. It's the reason why he wasn't indicted mostly because they didn't have the hard evidence that you did in that case. So I wonder what that means for the NFL. I also think the NFL knows they're the NFL, right? They can kind of do their own thing and people move on and just keep watching. So I wonder how much that plays into it, but I don't know I don't know how much exactly it will. Ultimately, I'm kind of, I don't know if I'm at the point where I think he gets a year. I don't know for sure. And based on some of the information we got this week, I know Rusty Harding kind of talked about he thinks the NFL didn't necessarily get enough to make it seem like he feels pretty good about their side of it. That's obviously lawyer speak in some ways, but I don't know that they have enough like hard evidence to suspend him for a year. But maybe they will. Maybe they will take that Trevor Bauer route and set the precedent. Yeah, and that is my concern. I didn't think that until the Bauer thing was issued, and then it's just that has kind of taken my thought process and kind of changed it dramatically. All right, Spencer German and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little Baker Mayfield and some other topics. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Thanks for buying a fishing license. I want you to picture all the great things this simple purchase does. Like building public boat ramps, keeping local waters clean, and maintaining a healthy fish population.
What's Mom doing?
When you buy a fishing license, you do a lot. Every dollar protects and maintains your local waterways for future generations to enjoy. Visit takemefishing.org.
We continue talking Browns with Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan. So Pro Football Talk has come out and said the Panthers want the Browns to pay $13 to $14 million of the nearly $19 million salary for Baker Mayfield. That's where the talks broke down. That's an awfully high price, Spencer. In your mind, what do you think the Browns should do with Baker Mayfield?
I've kind of, when this whole thing happened, the fallout of the trade and Baker sort of saying he wanted out, I sort of jokingly on a show during a show I was hosting throughout the idea of what if they keep him until training camp, wait for somebody to get hurt, and then maybe they can force their way into a trade because somebody gets desperate. I said at the time sort of tongue in cheek, but then as time went on, I kind of felt more and more like this is the realistic possibility and option, right? Like that seems to be more of what they should do rather than just cutting bait and eating the entire salary and getting nothing for him. So I do think that might be where Andrew Berry's head is at. I think they know at this point they're probably going to have to pay some of that salary. It sounds like from the report you mentioned, 13 to 14 million was maybe a little bit more than they wanted to. But I do think they'll pay part of it, and I do think training camp becomes a realistic possibility. I mean, you think about the other quarterbacks that could be traded for, and Baker Mayfield's salary is a drop in the bucket compared to a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo who you're trading for, unless you really like Jimmy Garoppolo more. So I do think something could come to fruition then. Beyond that, though, if you still were stuck with him, yeah, I mean, I think you do have to cut him at some point because I think going into the season with him still on the roster would be more of a disastrous scenario in a lot of ways than if you actually get a trade partner. So, yeah, if Andrew Berry's trying to play hardball and get something in return, I totally understand that. I think that might be the best route right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would hold on to him to get something for him because he does have value. I mean, right now, the folks that are downplaying it, they're trying to get him on the cheap, and I think Andrew Berry realizes that and will kind of play it a little slower. We're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Baker Mayfield in a situation.
My question is, I think that if Baker Mayfield doesn't come to the workouts when they're mandatory, then he ought to start getting fined, and then it will cut the amount of money that the Browns have to pay him if he doesn't show up. I think that's a very good question. Have a great day.
And as always, we appreciate all the voicemails. Now, yes, he would be fined, but it's not going to be substantial. The dollar figure of a contract is you basically divide it by the 17 games, and game checks are the big chunk of that. So any type of fines they could levy, if he did not show up, it would not significantly eat into that nearly $19 million.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he still gets paid. This is like, it's not like the money just gets taken out of his salary. It would just be, you still get paid, you still get the game check, especially if they tell him, we don't want you to show up, but we'll still pay you, kind of like Deshaun Watson went through last year. It would just be that he then owed these fines. I also don't know, like that whole situation's always fluid. Teams can always say, yeah, we won't fine you or we will fine you. I think the Browns know, like, it does nothing for them to fine him. They don't really necessarily want him there. So I think it's just a matter of waiting out for the right situation to trade him, and then they're not going to mess around trying to collect money from him after that.
Yeah, the point that I think the caller was trying to figure out, it's the game checks, that missing the game checks would eat into that, that nearly $19 million, and that's just not going to happen. They're kind of on the hook for that.
Yeah,
when you guarantee it, you're on the hook for that. This one is from Pro Football Focus. Each and every team's top 3 players heading into the 2022 season. So Pro Football Focus goes Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb, Joel Bitonio as the Browns' top 3 players. Also considered Ward, Teller, and Watson. Let me ask you this, Spencer. If you were going to go top 3 players for the Browns, who would they be?
Ooh, it's a good question. I think they got at least Myles Garrett right for sure. I would probably have to put Denzel Ward on here. Obviously, he's had the injury issues over the years, but when he's out there, he's a top-tier corner, and I think he proved that with the salary and the extension that he got. For the 3rd spot, I'm torn between Nick Chubb and Deshaun Watson, and I wonder if I didn't read this article myself, but I wonder if the looming suspension played into it at all for Deshaun Watson, because I would just say, in general, with how valuable quarterback play is, I probably would lean Deshaun Watson over Nick Chubb, but I understand where they're going with Nick Chubb as well. So I think I'd go Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, and Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I'd probably go Garrett, Chubb, and Watson, but I could certainly understand Ward as well. you know, it's kind of nice when you got a bunch of guys that you're trying to pick as talented players. All right, when you look at this roster as we sit here, you know, before Memorial Day, what areas do you think need to be upgraded for the Browns to be kind of what everybody wants them to be?
I think the obvious one, other than we talked about defensive line a little earlier in the show, I think the obvious one is wide receiver, right? I mean, you got Amari Cooper there, and I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to be great in this offense. I think him and Deshaun Watson are going to just really play very well off of each other once, again, assuming Watson maybe gets suspended once he's back out there. But I do think, yeah, there's a lot of high hopes for David Bell, and I think he's going to end up being a phenomenal player in that slot role, but how much can we really rely on him? Obviously, they feel pretty highly about Donovan Peoples-Jones, and I think we saw some progress and potential in him last year, but I still think he has some room to grow as well. So there's just a lot of question marks still that I have. I mean, there's the reports that they're going to pay David Njoku over $13 million per year to be their number one tight end, and people want to know if he's earned that or not. And again, it's a guy who we haven't seen go over 1,000 yards as a tight end. So some questions still, I think, in that aspect of this offense, and for good reason. And I think another veteran in that room obviously could go a long way. Guys that come to mind, like I love the idea of Will Fuller if he's going to stay healthy. That's always been his biggest bugaboo. Maybe Emmanuel Sanders could make some sense. Maybe a T.Y. Hilton. I don't know what asking prices you're getting for those guys, but those are some of the names sort of off the top of my head that come to mind. I think Julio Jones is kind of the game's passed him by at this point. I don't know what you're going to get out of him, but Will Fuller maybe comes to mind as somebody who stands out. Maybe Deshaun Jackson. I know he's been thrown around a couple times as well, and I think that is one thing this team still needs is a deep threat.
Yeah, I agree with you on a veteran wide receiver. My concern would be if Amari Cooper misses 3-4 games, your wide receiving core is awfully young at that point.
Great point.
Spencer German, as always, great stuff. Appreciate it very much. Thanks very much, Spencer. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Hopefully we'll get to do it again soon, Dave. Appreciate you.
Sounds good. Spencer German, make sure you listen out for him, 92.3 The Fan. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily will join us. We'll talk a little bit about the running back room. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns, and we're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one with a question about the running back position.
Hi, guys. Love the show. Got a quick question for you. How do you think the running back room is going to shake out? Do you think the Browns are waiting on Drew Rosenhaus to pull another Duke Johnson-esque move, or do you think a trade might be coming? What's your opinion? Thank you.
As always, we appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Eddie McDonald for Dog Pound Daily. Eddie, I will let you answer that one first, and then I will follow up with my opinion. But what do you think with the running back room?
The running back room is loaded in a standpoint of they have depth there. They have 2 starters. They have, if they need to, they have a good backup in Johnson, Belton, who is coming into second year, and they drafted Jerome Ford. How many do they take into the season? I'd say 3 or 4. Can one of these guys be traded? I think one of them is traded. I don't know which one that is yet. I'm going back and forth if it's Kareem Hunt or if it is Dearness Johnson, who is at the OTAs, but he has not signed his tender yet. Hunt has the most value. Obviously, he can be a starter for a lot of other teams in this league. And I know fans don't like that, but that's what happens when you have a franchise quarterback. You have a tough business decisions to make, and this isn't going to be the running back room for the next 5 years. So I see Andrew Berry getting some value out of either Johnson or Hunt.
Yeah, I'm really, I go back and forth with this one. I understand it. It is a position of strength without question, but I don't know that you trade. The Browns want to be a running team. I know they're going to pass more with Deshaun Watson. They consider themselves contenders, and I just don't know that you trade either Dearness Johnson or Kareem Hunt when you think you're a contender. And I understand the thought behind maximizing value, and you're never going to play 3 running backs. I get it. But the question I would have is if Ford can play gunner or can play something on special teams where he brings value and can do it at a pretty high level, then I could see them keeping an extra running back that way.
Sure, absolutely. And I don't want Kareem Hunt to go, and I know a lot of people that will listen to this and hear this will not want him to go. They'll think that's a bad decision. Good thing we aren't the GMs. I would keep him. I would get rid of Johnson, not because I think he's a bad player. I think he can be a good backup somewhere else, but he's the 3rd chair in this running back room. And like you said with Ford, he's probably going to be a special teamer his first year, but I don't think they're going to cut him because they just drafted him and they see something in him for the future. And next year, Kareem Hunt isn't here. His contract is up, so he could come back. Johnson hasn't signed his tender yet, so it'll be interesting to see. But I would not trade them. But if they do, I think it's Hunt or Johnson.
Yeah, and I get it. I get the thought without question. All right, NFL.com came out with the projected starters for every team in the AFC North. Let's take a look at the projected starters for the Browns. And when you look at it, pretty good. When you look at this, what areas do you think maybe need tweaking, and just how good do you think this roster is?
I'll answer the second question first. I think this roster is extremely good, very talented, a lot of different things. Their offensive line is still one of the best in football. They have a top 5 to top 10 quarterback now. We don't know how long his suspension will be, if there will be one. They have one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in the NFL right now. Amari Cooper is the top receiver in this league. It looks very good on paper. Where I would tweak something is the wide receiver room, and you guys just touched on in the last segment where, if Cooper misses 3 or 4 games, say, hopefully he doesn't, but if he does, is Donovan Peoples-Jones, enough to go to the number 1 guy, and then David Bell go to number 2. I think getting someone like Will Fuller, as Spencer said, would be great. I think that is an area of need. They do need that deep threat, unless they think Anthony Schwartz can, step up from year 1 to year 2. I don't know how likely that is. That's a very tall task to ask of him. But, the offense looks great on paper. Those starters look fantastic. I can't wait to see that. Wide receiver for the offense is the biggest area of, I don't even say concern, just an area of interest at this time.
Yeah, and I know the defensive tackle they have a bunch of young guys. I think they really like the young guys that they have, and they're going to have to, when you have stars that you have to pay, you have to find a way to develop players at other positions so that you can manage the salary cap. And that's kind of where they're at, probably with wide receiver as well as defensive tackle.
Oh, absolutely. So they have Amari Cooper, and I know we're going to talk about him here shortly. And that's their big wide receiver, their big money wide receiver. The other ones are still on relatively, team-friendly deals. Donovan Peoples-Jones in his second year. As for defense, the defensive tackle, a lot of people want them to go sign someone. I would love if they went and signed Akeem Hicks. That'd be fantastic. Or maybe an Ndamukong Suh or someone of that caliber. They're not going to take very much money, but those are the positions that, are going to see the decrease in money. And I think the Browns do like what they have, or young guy wise, for the defensive line. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see 3 defensive ends on the line at one time for a lot of the season.
Yeah, they have a lot of guys that have that flexibility. All right, you mentioned Amari Cooper. He makes this list: 5 most underrated wide receivers heading into the 2022 NFL season. This is from Sports4CLE, and Amari Cooper is 3rd on the list. It goes Michael Thomas, Terry McLaurin, and Amari Cooper. I'm not sure how Michael Thomas is underrated. He hasn't played in a couple of years. For the most part, Cooper should be able to fly under the radar this season. Browns have always been run heavy. That's likely not going to change due to his soft-spoken personality and play. Cooper will keep a relatively low profile. But again, 2022 comes to an end. Expect him to be mentioned amongst the best receivers in the league. Cooper is known as a great route runner. I think, and again, not pending the potential suspension, that could be real interesting to see how that develops between Watson and Cooper.
Oh, absolutely. And I know it's OTAs. I know it doesn't mean anything. We've seen them connect a few times now. That has me excited. OTAs get me excited every year. It's some sort of football for the fandom to dissect and talk about. But I think Cooper is going to have a sensational year with Watson. He played well with Dak Prescott for the past 4 years. Last year in 2021, he had a bit of a regression of a year. He battled some injuries. He also wasn't the only guy there. He wasn't the guy there with CeeDee Lamb and others. But he had 68 catches, 865 yards, and 8 touchdowns. That sounds like a dream for the Browns. Coming off of last season and the previous season. He's going to be a huge contributor to this team. And also, he is a steal. That trade is still a steal because they traded him for essentially a 5th-round pick, and they swapped 6, or they swapped 5th, and it was a 6, whatever it was. But that's a steal. And then you look at the Devontae Adams deal and the Tyreek Hill deal and then the A.J. Brown deal, and then that's going to be the same thing for Terry McLaurin when he gets paid by whoever, DK Metcalf. They have a relatively cheap, quote-unquote cheap, contract in Cooper, and that's a huge thing because instead of paying a guy $27-28 million a year, they're only paying him about $22 million a year. So that's a significant, decrease.
Yeah, and that is very important when dealing with the salary cap. One of the guys that the Browns like is a young guy. Donovan Peoples-Jones was kind of up and down a little bit a season ago. Kevin Stefanski talked about DPJ and what he's seen from him.
I think what you've seen from Donovan going into year 3, I think he does continue to take strides with regards to his body, very good understanding of our scheme and our system, so we're moving him around the formation quite a bit. So I think it's just more rhythming up with Deshaun, rhythming up with Jacoby and Josh, and understanding a little bit of how we're installing and adjusting a few things, just making sure that he's on top of those things.
And again, Eddie, I think it's kind of important to just point out, I think one of the thought processes the Browns have with the wide receivers is that group is going to benefit from having a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, and I'm not trying to take a shot at Baker Mayfield at all by saying that, but they expect the quarterback play to be elite and consistent.
Absolutely, and that's what they made the trade for. That's what they paid him all the money for. He makes guys better around him. And Baker didn't really do that a whole lot. I'm not saying he played bad all the time because we obviously saw that he didn't. But Watson just elevates you to another level because he is such an elite, passer in the NFL, and that is key. And it's key for Donovan Peoples-Jones this year because he had a solid rookie season. He doubled his numbers in production in his second season. So now let's see what he can do in his third season. I don't want people to think that he's just going to have this breakout year where he's going to have like a 1,500 yard, 10 touchdown season. But he's going to benefit a lot from Cooper being there and getting better and just getting more reps with him. So I have a lot of high hopes for him, but I don't want people to overhype him to the point where if he, is short of anything, then they're going to just criticize him.
Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk biggest takeaways from OTAs and what's next for the Browns. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily. So this session of OTA is getting ready to wrap up out in Berea. Eddie, what's the biggest takeaway? You know, we've kind of digested everything. What has been the most important thing that you've kind of gathered from what's gone on out in Berea and the best sign and then some of the areas of concern?
The biggest thing is just Deshaun Watson being there. That does not seem real. The Cleveland Browns have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL or top 10, wherever you want to put him in that list. It does not matter. He's an elite quarterback. The fact that he is there and we have that, I still can't believe it. And even seeing it, I love seeing it. Don't get me wrong, but it's just still hard to believe. That just doesn't happen for the Browns. Just seeing him out there and he's taking the first and second team reps, which I thought was interesting. And Jacoby Brissett is taking some of the third team. It's not like they're doing a whole lot. They're walking through. They're not really he's not really throwing many passes. They're going to hand off. They're going to just go through the plays, and these have all been scripted for months. But him being out there is the biggest thing. There's really not a concern. There really can't be a concern for OTAs, at least in my opinion. Guys not being there, that's neither here nor there to me. These aren't mandatory. Most of the team is there. I think Myles Garrett was coming in this morning, if I saw correctly. I don't know if he was there today. I didn't get a chance to see that, but there's really no concern. Especially because Clowney came in. Everyone thought he was going to come in after the OTAs because he doesn't like doing them. But he was there. Looked like he was pretty pleasant and happy. And this team just has a different feel to it already than what it did just a year ago.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And the thing that is apparent, and again, who really knows? But it seems like the players are excited to have Deshaun Watson there, which. By and large, when you get guys that are ready to follow, good things usually happen.
Absolutely. And the fact that he gave Anthony Walker a Rolex and then he's giving, I think it's $50,000 to his dad's high school football program and buying all of his suits for this year, that speaks volumes. And, he just took his team to the Bahamas, or the offense anyway, to the Bahamas before OTAs. Seemed like that was a great time for all. He made like a 25-foot putt or something, which is incredible. They just all are buying into him. And, that's the biggest thing, again, with him there. Everyone's like, yeah, we are thriving off his leadership. He's a true leader on and off the field. And, he's doing everything he can to make sure that we are a complete unit. Because in the past, we've seen that the team has deteriorated from within. And now it's a different vibe. And Deshaun's there and everyone's looking to him as the leader, and rightfully so.
So what's next for the Browns? More OTAs. So May 31st to June 2nd, there will be another OTA session, as well as June 6th to the 9th. Then there's mandatory mini camp from the 14th to the 16th. So ramping up little by little. That's where you kind of get the installs and those kind of things, and then you send everybody back and make sure you know the playbook in and out.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kevin Stefanski is one to fine-tune this. Like I said earlier, it's not just the Browns, but almost every team scripts their plays for OTAs. Those are known ahead of time. They're just getting reps in with each other and going through different motions of what they're going to do. Learning the playbook is huge, especially for the rookies. They talked about in the latest Building the Browns that, studying in these film sessions are what is crucial for your success in the NFL, and that's absolutely right. So it's exciting to see. I know the media gets to go on the Wednesdays of each of those days. So, we'll hear more next Wednesday and the following Wednesday after that, and then 2 weeks off, and we'll have mini camp, and then we'll be rolling.
Yeah, again, everything gets rolling in June, and I know you've written a couple articles that we want to get into. So 4 players Browns were right to move on from. Again, this is one of the articles that Eddie has written. Mack Wilson, Troy Hill, Austin Hooper, Jarvis Landry. Take us through kind of the thought process with those.
So with Mack Wilson, he was up and down. There were some games he gave it his all. He gave it his all. He was a fan favorite. He's also one of the ones that fans criticized the most because of his inconsistent play. He'd miss a lot of tackles. So a fresh start for him, I think, will do him good, especially going to someone like Bill Belichick, who has ties with his Alabama coach Nick Saban. So I think he'll be able to get the most out of him. Troy Hill, he didn't have a great season in 2021. He was a huge free agent signing, not to big money or anything, but he just didn't live up to the hype. It's not he played bad by any means. I know you guys talked about that earlier in the show. He didn't play bad by any means, but they saw something in Martin Emerson where they said, okay, we can trade Troy Hill. We get a draft pick out of it. Andrew Berry covets those. They lost some of those, obviously, this year by trading for Watson. So that's smart, and they can move guys around. I think I saw Greg Newsome was in the slot this week, and then Greedy Williams on the outside. As for Austin Hooper, he was just very unreliable. The experiment did not work. For a few days, he was the highest paid tight end in the NFL. At the time, that was awesome because he was coming off 2 Pro Bowl seasons in Atlanta, and it just never clicked in Cleveland. I wish him well in Tennessee. And then with Jarvis Landry, there was no way they were going to pay him $16 million for his production that we've talked about on the show a bunch. His production went down. He's been injury prone the past couple of seasons. David Bell is a younger, somewhat version of him. It's like a carbon copy almost. And so, I wish him well back at his home and with the Saints. But yeah, those guys were right to move on from, and I think the Browns have made upgrades or at least addition by subtraction.
And I know some fans are they get attached to players. This is what happens in the NFL when you have a good team because of the salary cap. You're going to have to make tough choices. So it's going to happen every year if the Browns are good and Andrew Berry is doing his job. Another one that you wrote, this is interesting as well. 5 toughest quarterbacks that the Browns will face in 2022. It's pretty decent, but it's not quite the gauntlet that it was a season ago. So Justin Herbert 5, Joe Burrow 4, 2 games against him, 2 against Lamar Jackson, who's 3. Then they get Josh Allen and Tom Brady. Those are pretty elite quarterbacks that this defense is going to have to face.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting pressure on those guys is going to be key. Myles Garrett and Clowney is back now, and then they have Chase Winovich. Perrin Winfrey is a rookie. Isaiah Thomas is a rookie. Alex Wright is the rookie. Maybe they sign someone else. Who knows? But stopping them will be key. And yes, they play Burrow and Jackson twice a year. This year they play them back-to-back twice. So they played the Ravens in Week 7 before in Baltimore before going home for the Halloween game against the Bengals. So Lamar and Burrow back-to-back, and then it's flipped. It is the Bengals in Week 14, the Ravens in Week 15. So that's nice. That's a nice little stretch there. And then in Weeks 11 and 12, it's Allen and then Tom Brady. And that's, okay, Josh Allen, who you can call the best quarterback in the league, and no one's going to really argue with you too much. That's a legitimate claim that people can make. And Tom Brady's the GOAT. I wrote in there, here, he's the GOAT. That's it. What more is there to write? Obviously, I went and explained a little bit further and explained just some history of him against the Browns. And he's 7-1 in his career. Obviously, none of that matters this year, but that's just, playing the greatest of all time. And then Justin Herbert, he played well against the Browns last year, 4 touchdowns, I believe, and 498 yards in that shootout win. Just a gauntlet of guys, and they played them relatively in close weeks where it is Herbert's in 5, 7 and 8 is Jackson and Burrow, and then 11 and 12 is Allen and Brady. So they have their work cut out for them, and that defense, I think, is primed to stop them all. It's just a matter of will they.
Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break. Would Colin Kaepernick be a better backup quarterback for the Browns than Jacoby Brissett? We'll dive into that. I'll have my thoughts. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily. So Eddie did not write this, but Dog Pound Daily did. The question, and it's an interesting question, is Colin Kaepernick a better backup option than Jacoby Brissett? Before we dive into this, let's take a look. And again, I know Colin Kaepernick took the 49ers to the Super Bowl one year, but his last year in 2016, he had a 1-10 record. So he was pretty good in 2013. He was okay in 2014, 2015, 2-6, 2016, 1-10. Eddie, my answer would be no. Give me Jacoby Brissett. The guy hasn't played in 6 years as well. So again, I get it. At one point in time, he was a very dynamic quarterback, but he had a couple of good years, and then the league kind of adjusted to him.
Yeah, and I would say no. As soon as I saw this, I was like, well, that's an instant no. But let me read what Matt says. Shout out Matt McPatrick for that. He's the one who wrote that. And it's an interesting think piece if you think about it, because he's been out of the league for 6 years. He's been wanting to be back in the league for all those years, but he was somewhat blackballed, depending on who you ask and what they have to say about it. But yeah, he hasn't played in 6 years. Brissett, while he doesn't, light the world on fire, he is a serviceable backup. So if he has to come in relief for Deshaun because of the suspension or injury, he's capable of doing so, and he has a good running game and offensive line around him. But Kaepernick, yeah, he hasn't played in a while. He had a good season, 12-4. The last season there, he did go 1-10 as the starter, which I don't think wins are a quarterback stat entirely. And that team was just a mess that year. They just weren't very good. They weren't as good as they were in the previous few years with him. But I hope he does come back in the league. I just don't think it's going to be with the Browns, and I think that they're content with Brissett, and then Josh Dobbs is his backup.
Yeah, and again, I think it's an interesting question. I just again, he hasn't played in 6 years. All right, before we let you go, let's take a look. Free agents, and we've talked about it. Not sure the Browns are looking to do that. Let's take a look at free agent defensive tackles and who might be available. As you look at those names, and again, I think I know the answer to this. Which of those names intrigue you? Which do you think would be the best fit for the Browns?
Akeem Hicks. Me and you have talked about this a couple of times on this show. I think he is a dynamic run stopper, and he gets to the quarterback as well. He gets some pressure, which would allow Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney to get to the quarterback. He'd be number one. I wouldn't mind seeing Ndamukong Suh. I know he's 35, but he wouldn't command a lot of money. He didn't have the greatest of 2021 seasons, but he's still serviceable, and he's still a big body in the front line there to stop the run. Any one of those guys, I'd be fine with. I do, trust the Andrew Berry process. I don't know if I trust that they're done with free agency. So I think they're either going to go with, defensive tackle or wide receiver, the two positions we talked about earlier that, are more expendable than others when it comes to, making tough decisions.
Yeah, I could see them doing something. I don't think they'll do both. They'll do one or the other, I think. And probably it'll depend on, what they see in these next few months is to see, or next few weeks leading into the time before training camp. Eddie McDonald, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Great stuff, Eddie. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And before I get out of here, Jacob Roach, one of my colleagues at Dog Pound Daily, he's donating the next 2 checks of Dog Pound Daily he gets to the victims of the tragic shooting in Texas. He has a video that you can hear about this. You can go find the GoFundMe that he's donating to, and there's others. Roachism13. Go follow him, get his views up. I think it's a tremendous gesture what he's doing, and I'm glad that he's part of our team.
Absolutely. Again, Jacob Roach, Dog Pound Daily, go find it. And certainly the tragedy in Texas, something that's very a very worthy cause. Eddie, appreciate it. Thanks very much, man.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, Eddie McDonald, make sure you read them pages of Dog Pound Daily. Before we go, Cleveland Guardians making a bunch of moves. So they've recalled Connor Pilkington from AAA Columbus. He'll pitch. They've recalled Richie Palacios from AAA. They've selected the contract of Oscar Gonzalez. He is batting sixth. That's a guy that has hit for some power in the minors. Franmil Reyes on the 10-day DL, right hamstring tightness, and they have designated infielder Yu Chang for assignment. Indians in Detroit getting ready to play the Tigers tonight. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Scheduled guests, Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, and Ashley Bastock, also from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. That's tomorrow, 4 o'clock, Sports for CLE. We'll see you then. Have a great night, everybody.